When you're talking about all your private parts remaining what they are as men and thinking that you get to use girls' bathrooms. I'm not down for that. Number two, when you're trying to compete against women, against girls in women's sports, trying to act like there's no advantage when there's no way in hell that there's no advantage. This is not about being anti-anything. This is about being pro-girls, pro-females, pro-women, pro-ladies. That's what this is about.
Let's dive straight into the meat of what Stephen A. Smith had to say here, because this is where the entire narrative shifts from a vague cultural argument into a hard, undeniable line in the sand. When Stephen A. steps up and addresses this topic, he doesn't do it with whispers or corporate safety filters. He leans right into the microphone and lays out a distinction that mainstream sports media has desperately tried to blur. Think about what's actually happening here. For months, anyone trying to stand up for the integrity of women's sports has been hit with immediate, lazy accusations of malice or hatred. But Stephen A. completely dismantles that defensive wall right out of the gate. He draws a massive, permanent line between supporting adult personal choices in private life and rewriting the rulebook of competitive athletics. He makes it crystal clear: live your life, make your choices, and pursue whatever path brings you peace as an adult. But the second that choice crosses the boundary into women's locker rooms and biological female sports brackets, the conversation changes entirely. What makes this clip so powerful for your channel is the raw honesty behind it. He is calling out the absurdity of pretending there is zero athletic advantage when basic biology tells us something entirely different. It's an argument rooted in common sense, not cruelty. When he states that he is simply being pro-girls, pro-females, pro-women, he is echoing what millions of fans at home are screaming at their televisions. This isn't about tearing people down. It's about building a protective wall around female athletes who spent their entire lives grinding toward a fair playing field, only to see it compromised by institutional cowardice. Use this clip to set the tone, grab your viewers by the collar, and force them to look at the undeniable reality of what is happening on the hardwood.
This is the bullshit. It's the selfishness. It's putting yourself before the betterment of the whole.
Now let's look at the absolute peak of hypocrisy in this whole situation, because this is where Stephen A. Smith takes off the gloves and goes straight for the jugular regarding Minnesota Lynx coach Cheryl Reeve. Picture the scene. The WNBA is finally catching lightning in a bottle, drawing massive television audiences, filling seats, and capturing mainstream attention in a way it never has before. Millions of new eyes are tuned into a high-stakes matchup against the Indiana Fever, the epicenter of the league's explosive growth. And what does a veteran, high-profile head coach choose to do? Does she focus on the game, the competition, or the collective health of the league? Absolutely not. Instead, Cheryl Reeve steps onto the floor wearing a blatant political statement across her chest, a Trans Kid Belong t-shirt, right in front of the blinding lights of the Caitlin Clark media circus. Stephen A. looks right down the barrel of the camera and calls this out for what it truly is: pure, unadulterated selfishness. It is a stunning display of ego, where an individual in a position of leadership decides that her personal political signaling is far more important than the brand, the business, and the economic survival of the organization that pays her salary. This clip is gold for your commentary because it exposes the disconnect between league leadership and reality. Coaches like Reeve are playing social activist while the foundation of the league is still shaking on fragile economic ground. Stephen A. rightly brands this as absolute bullshit because it forces a polarizing wedge right through a fan base that just wants to watch basketball. When leaders prioritize virtue signaling over the collective good of the sport, they are essentially biting the hand that feeds them. Drop this clip into your video to show your audience exactly how internal actors are actively undermining the very league they claim to support, proving that sometimes the biggest enemies of progress aren't outside critics, but the people running the show from the inside.
Cheryl Reeve wore that shirt. Well, I wanted to give this league a chance, but look at the shit she's got on. Circus clown. I don't want to watch that. I don't want to sit here with my girls or my boys. I don't want them seeing that shirt.
This next clip cuts straight to the brutal, unfiltered business reality that league executives are too arrogant to acknowledge, and it's a vital point for your breakdown. For nearly 3 decades, the WNBA struggled to find stable financial footing, with many questioning whether the league had ever truly turned a legitimate, sustainable profit. Then, massive new waves of fans started tuning in, driven by the unprecedented popularity of players like Caitlin Clark and the organic conversations sparked by competitors like Sophie Cunningham. The doors were finally swinging open to a massive new audience of everyday sports fans. And how did the league and its figures reward those new eyeballs? By immediately dragging the product straight into a polarizing political circus. As the commentary highlights, everyday fans who tuned in to give women's basketball a chance were suddenly greeted by coaches wearing activist shirts and arenas embroiled in off-court ideological warfare. You can literally hear the frustration in the sentiment. I wanted to give this league a chance, but look at what she's wearing. I don't want to watch that, and I'm not giving them my viewership. This is an essential angle for your commentary because it highlights the direct economic fallout of institutional overreach. Sports fans watch sports to escape, to witness raw competition, and to support athletes based on skill and heart. When leagues alienate casual viewers by pushing divisive social statements right onto the court, those viewers simply turn off the TV and go back to ignoring the sport entirely. The WNBA relies on every single viewer to build its brand, yet figures within the league are actively slamming the door in the face of growth. Use this clip to emphasize to your audience that actions have consequences, and alienating the paying public is a fast track back to empty arenas and flatlined ratings.
Ladies and gentlemen, at some point in time, there has to be the return of common sense.
Oh,
This is not about preaching hate. Nobody is supporting that on this show. Nobody should be supporting that in our society. I am a live and let live kind of guy.
We are wrapping up with a clip that captures the absolute core philosophy of this entire controversy. A desperate, necessary plea for the return of basic, everyday common sense. Stephen A. Smith takes a moment here to strip away all the noisy media spin, the activist talking points, and the manufactured outrage to ask a very simple question. When did protecting basic fairness become a controversial stance? He reiterates, with total clarity, that this discussion has zero to do with preaching hate or stripping away anyone's civil liberties. Live your life, make your personal choices, and find your happiness. Nobody on this stage or in this audience is arguing against human dignity. But dignity and fairness are not mutually exclusive. When common sense dictates that biological realities matter in athletic competition, ignoring that truth doesn't make you progressive, it makes you blind. Stephen A. champions the idea that standing up for female athletes is the ultimate form of being pro-girls, and he challenges the cultural narrative trying to label defenders of women's sports as villains. This clip is your ultimate closer for the video because it grounds the entire debate in moral clarity and universal logic. It reassures your viewers that wanting a fair, uncompromised space for young girls to compete isn't extreme. It is the baseline expectation of any functional sporting society. Use this segment in your commentary to unite your audience, cut through the noise of the mainstream media narrative, and leave a lasting impact that resonates long after the video ends. It's powerful, it's reasonable, and it hits right at the heart of why this story has captured the attention of the entire sports world. As we look at the massive wave of reactions crashing across the sports landscape, from Stephen A. Smith going scorched earth on national television to legends like Charles Barkley stepping up to speak their minds, one undeniable reality comes into focus. We are witnessing a monumental turning point in how sports media interacts with cultural flashpoints. For years, major networks and league offices tried to manage public perception through a tight, risk-averse filter, hoping that controversial topics would quietly fade away if ignored. But as this recent saga proves, the public has zero appetite for sanitized silence when core principles of fairness are hanging in the balance. The backlash surrounding the WNBA, the treatment of players like Sophie Cunningham, and the public defiance of coaches like Cheryl Reeve have exposed a deep, widening chasm between institutional activism and everyday sports fans. Sports have always served as a sanctuary, a place where people of all backgrounds can come together to witness raw competition, celebrate athletic excellence, and escape the exhausting divisions of everyday life. When leagues allow politics and activist messaging to overshadow the game itself, they inevitably alienate the very audience that fuels their economic survival. As Stephen A. Smith passionately pointed out, standing up for biological reality and demanding a safe, fair playing field for young girls isn't about promoting hate or tearing down human dignity. It is about the fundamental preservation of women's sports. Furthermore, this moment highlights the desperate need for a return of common sense in sports governance. When league executives and team owners prioritize personal ideological statements over the collective health and financial stability of the brand, they commit a fatal business error. Fans are no longer willing to quietly accept being talked down to, nor are they hesitant to tune out when a product stops focusing on sports. The meteoric rise in viewership driven by players like Caitlin Clark proved that the public is hungry for great basketball, but that goodwill is fragile. Alienating casual viewers with off-court controversies is a fast track back to empty arenas and flatline television ratings. Looking ahead, this explosive debate sends a clear warning to sports leagues everywhere. You cannot lecture your audience and expect them to keep cheering. The voices of commentators and athletes who refuse to be intimidated by corporate pressure have changed the playing field forever. Authenticity is winning out over scripted public relations, and common sense is pushing back against institutional overreach. Whether league leadership chooses to listen, adapt, and return the focus strictly to the game will determine the long-term survival and success of professional sports. One thing is certain, however, the conversation has broken wide open, and the demand for absolute honesty and fairness on the hardwood is never going back into the box.